So next I want to introduce John Curran. He'll be presenting an ARIN update. John is the president and CEO of ARIN, and he's been a valued speaker at NANOG for many years, and we definitely welcome the continued collaboration with ARIN. So welcome, John. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I see many familiar faces. For those who, I also see new faces, and for those remote who don't know me, I'm John Curran. I'm the president and CEO of ARIN. I've been in the industry a while. I was the CTO of Bolt Beranek and Newman, BBN, CTO of Exo Communications, CTO of a hosting company, ServerVault. But I'm really here about the Internet Number Registry System. I was involved in founding ARIN in 1997. I served on the board as chairman for 12 years. And then for the last 12 years, I've served as the CEO of ARIN. And I was asked by a couple of people, hey, there's things going on in the global Internet Number Registry System. You might know about them. Can you come talk to ARIN, to NANOG? Because it's right before the ARIN meeting, which follows this. And I said, sure. So I have about 14 slides, and we have about 14 minutes. I'm going to go a little quicker than 1 minute per slide, because you might want to get one or two questions in. I may not be able to answer your questions. I'm going to tell you this is some interesting and sensitive topics, and so as a result, is not everything I'm going to be able to answer, but I'll do my best. Okay, so 5 RIRs. We just heard from someone from RIPE earlier: ARIN, LACNIC, APNIC, and AFRINIC. I'm going to be talking about global developments predominantly in AFRINIC, because that's where the questions have been raised. This is the precursor that says I may not answer your question. We don't normally comment on disputes or matters going on at ARIN. We don't comment on disputes or matters at other RIRs. That's our general practice. There's some exceptions, which I'll talk about. However, since I was asked, I'm going to try to bring everyone up to speed on what's going on. So there's been some legal developments. And there's legal developments in all the RIRs. That's a common thing. That in and of itself doesn't actually warrant attention here of what's happening in AFRINIC. However, there's some implications on this particular set. So in 2020, AFRINIC completed a registry audit. And one of the customers in the registry audit was a customer called Cloud Innovation. And AFRINIC requested more information from Cloud Innovation. And a determination was made after that Cloud Innovation wasn't using the resources the way that it asked for them, and that they should be revoked after a customer transition period. Cloud Innovation principal is a gentleman named Lu Heng. Mr. Lu and his businesses disputed AFRINIC's authority to enforce its agreement in this regard. And so this is the core basis. This is what kicked off everything. Lu Heng engaged in several legal actions in the Mauritius courts to prevent AFRINIC from prevent having to return its address blocks to AFRINIC. And this is a good thing, okay? The fact of the matter is that people have agreements with RIRs, and you should be able to go to court and protect your rights. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. You have agreements with ARIN. If you think your rights are being stomped on, you should be able to go to court and have them enforced. Otherwise, what's the point of an agreement if you can't enforce it, okay? So the fact that there's a court action for someone to protect their rights is in and of itself not a problem. And no one should be concerned about that. And as I said, that does happen from time to time. However, one motion that was filed froze AFRINIC's bank accounts. Now, this is where we take a sort of left turn, because the moment you freeze the bank accounts of an RIR, you're no longer paying the staff, you may not be paying the telecommunications bills, you may not be paying the co-location bill, you may not be paying for fairly essential services that are involved in keeping 1/5 of the RIR system running. That's an issue, okay? And that's somewhat unexpected. It probably wouldn't happen in the US legal system, for example, but it did happen. And once that happened, this was no longer just an AFRINIC matter. This was a question of whether or not the Internet Number Registry System was still going to be running. And actually, all the RIRs at that point got involved. There was quite a bit of activity, and that order was modified and changed such that it's not applicable. freezing order was removed, they were able to pay their staff, but it was a fun and colorful time. There's been more orders. The last one was an injunction entered as a result of another filing preventing AFRINIC from holding its elections. And because of that, AFRINIC was unable to hold its last elections, therefore it doesn't have a board. If you don't have enough members on your board, you don't have quorum. If you don't have quorum, you can't do certain business. Very difficult doing certain activities. There's exceptions. Everyone has various provisions in their bylaws, but if you don't have a board, you are running on borrowed time. There's only certain activities you can and can't do. One of the members of AFRINIC, actually the CEO of AFRINIC, who's a member of AFRINIC, went to the court and said, I'm going to ask you to appoint interim directors so we can function as a business, and asked for a list. He didn't want to provide it himself. He asked the African Telecommunications Union, give me a list of some people who could serve in this interim role. Now, while this is all going on, and those activities are the ones that were most colorful in terms of endangering the possibility of the entire registry system, there's also been quite a bit of litigation. There's more than 40 claims filed against AFRINIC, majority of which are from Cloud Innovation. When you have that much legal work, you actually end up having to dedicate enormous resources to responding to that. And that actually now is becoming an issue. So when we look at the set of activities, this is why I'm sort of briefing you, because it has caused the other RIRs to get involved. As a result of the last governance activity, as I said, there's a request presently before the court to get directors to be appointed temporarily so AFRINIC can function. That's still pending. We hope that that will get resolved. The RIRs haven't been involved. That's been entirely within AFRINIC and its members filing motions to do that. But that's the current thing before us. If you want to know why we got involved in the past and how we got involved, I want to say that there's now a publicity campaign against AFRINIC and the Regional Internet Registry System, put on by an organization called the Number Resource Society. Now, there is an organization called the NRO, by the way, the Number Resource Organization. It's the 5 RIRs working together. NRS and NRO are two very different things. You might see NRS materials. They assert that the RIR system isn't functioning properly. And you should know about that. That's something you should read and pay attention to and see what you think of those claims. But it's becoming a pretty high-scale campaign. It's filed materials very negative about AFRINIC CEO and anyone who's spoken in favor of AFRINIC. And our goal is AFRINIC should be run transparently. We think AFRINIC should, just like every RIR, should be run by its members. But it's pretty hard to have open, fair conduct of an RIR when you have misinformation out there. And we have a little bit of that going on now in this regard. Now, the NRO, not the NRS, the NRO, the 5 RIRs, have been involved, and ARIN is one of them. I'm letting you know we're one of the ones that has been involved in responding to some of this. Amongst other things, we sent a letter, the 4 RIRs, not counting AFRINIC, to the Mauritius government. And we sent a letter to the government pointing out that while we do respect the ability of someone to go to court, we don't expect a portion of the Internet Number Registry System to be taken down while those matters are pending. And that to some extent, AFRINIC serves the entire continent, and that may not be something that is well known or well understood when you do things like freeze its bank accounts. And so you can find the letter. It's on the NRO website, NRO letter to Mauritius government. Some people get very upset that we would tell a government, hey, we think you need to pay more attention to AFRINIC here and understand it has an operational role in keeping the internet running. I will tell you, I don't feel bad about that or have any regrets. I think if I was a government, I'd want to know I had a portion of the RIR system running in my country, and that's a pretty important thing for them to be aware of. We've also sent communications to the community. We've sent out a couple of blog posts that explain all this. We sent out, the RIRs collectively sent out a message talking about the freezing of the bank accounts. All of this is still pending. Luckily, the bank accounts have been unfrozen. The governance matter and having insufficient quorum for AFRINIC is still pending, though. The court cases are still pending. I would say we are not stable, but not at high risk. It's trending towards getting better. We do expect at some point that AFRINIC will have a functioning board with appointed directors. We'll be able to hold a full member election to get whatever the members want for directors. We do expect at some point these cases will eventually in the courts go through due process and be settled. In the meantime, though, you now know what's going on in AFRINIC, in case you're not an AFRINIC member. I actually am between you and lunch, so now I just let you go to lunch, but you'd hate me if I didn't take questions. So I will take a few minutes of questions. Any questions on any of this? As I said, I may not be able to answer. We don't generally get involved in other RIRs, but you have the right to know what's going on since it's one Internet Number Registry System, even if it's spread in 5 operational pieces. No questions? Oh, come on. I actually expected to get peppered with these. Okay, last call. I will be here, and I will be obviously here through the ARIN meeting. So if you find me in the halls or want to get me at the ARIN meeting at any point, feel free to come up. Thank you, everyone.
That's the Daigle. So, this question might take 0 time or all the rest of the day. We have 5 RIRs because that's how it made sense to split up the territory of the globe as the RIR system evolved. Have you thought about spinning up a new RIR lately? And I appreciate that that's a loaded question, particularly given the distinct lack of IPv4 address space.
So we actually have a great process for creating new RIRs. It's documented. It's actually a consensus process that the 5 RIRs did, adopted. It's ICP2. You can find it. It was ratified by all 5 RIRs and then by the ICANN board. So if the community in a region were to get organized and were to be supported by the operators in that region and the governments, then it would be possible to create a new RIR. Now, what don't we have? Well, once you're created, you have to make to be created, you have to be certain things. You have to be operational, you have to have a sign of support, you have to be able to be self-governed, you have to have open elections, you have to operate in fair and transparent procedures. We do that, and then you're created, and then we never look back. There's actually no review of an RIR other than by its members as to how it's performing. And that's actually one of the claims being made here is maybe AFRINIC wasn't performing correctly. I don't know. I think that's a members issue myself. But there are people asking, what do we do if an RIR were to get captured, for example? An RIR could lose a lawsuit and end up being completely a non-membership organization the next week. So the governance is right now anchored in each region. Each region is responsible for its oversight of its government, of its RIR. The question is, do we need anything above that? Great question. Do we need the RIRs? We did an accountability review, each of us, 4 or 5 years back, where we looked at our bylaws, our accountability to membership. You can go to the NRO website and find that. So we've done a few baby steps in making sure we have good governance, but we don't have a systemic solution to how we handle an RIR that ends up unstable. We just don't. We also don't have a uniform set of standards regarding, we have one set at recognition in ICP2, but we have nothing beyond and no obligation outside of our own memberships to talk about our governance practices. Now there is an RFC 7020, and I might have my authorship on that. My hand was in it, but I don't know who ended up being the authors. But 720 is the RFC, that successor of 2050, and 7020 RFC says the Internet Number Registry System and how it's formed. And there's a paragraph in there about evolving the Internet Number Registry System. And it sort of says that can be done if the community of the Internet Number Registry System, the community of the 5 IRRs, have something they want to do on how we change this, and we talk with the other parties. Who are the other parties? Well, there's 2 of them. ICANN, because we use ICANN to organize ourselves, and ICANN has been involved since the beginning, well, almost the beginning, and the IETF, because the IETF is the source of the numbers. Those are both cited. So to the extent that we want to change how the registry system works, something other than 5 organizations, membership-based, we want to either add accountability mechanisms, or we want to have a higher standard, or we want to do anything in that regard. It is possible. First, the number community has to come to consensus, and then we have to talk to our partners. And that is in 7020. It's a very short paragraph, though, so don't expect much there. Any follow-up or any?
No, I think that's very helpful. Thank you. I think the only thing I would say is that, and I'll make it clear to the room that I'm a strong proponent of the RIR system, is that in taking that one paragraph into consideration, I think the top job is figuring out how to make sure that there continues to be reasonable customer and network-driven access to resource allocation across the globe in all of its parts.
Yep, agreed. Well, that's it. If there's no further questions, thank you for having me.